5 was one of my most highly anticipated games of the year. I've been a massive fan of Gears of War since I was around 9 years old when the second one came out, and it introduced me to the awesome story, the crazy action set pieces, the ridiculous, corny, but awesome one-liners, and I've been a fan since. So when I saw the Gears 5 trailer come out during E3, I was ecstatic, but at the same time I was also a little nervous because this is the second installment in the Coalition trilogy that they seem to be doing, because after the events of Gears of War Judgment, Epic Games decided to leave and go on to bigger things. Yeesh. So the Coalition decided to pick up where they left off. The thing is, the fourth game, while it wasn't terrible by any means, and it wasn't a Halo 4 at all, it was good. It was okay. But it didn't really shine a light to any of the other games at all. It wasn't as good as the original 3. So when I saw the trailer for the 5th game, I was a little nervous, but cautiously optimistic. So this review is set up the same way as Mortal Kombat 11 and Resident Evil 2, where I'll be talking about the different categories of the game and what was good about it, what was bad, what needed improvements. And then I'll give you my overall thoughts at the end and a score to see how good the game is. So without further ado, let's go into one of my most highly anticipated games of the year, Gears 5.
I see Jen first. I'll calm the storm before you brief her.
I'm sorry, is this Sergeant Phoenix being diplomatic?
You can call it what you want, but we're at war, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. We all have to be on the same page.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you think it'll help, then sure.
Wish you'd have been this willing to listen back at that silo.
Hey, it worked out, didn't it?
Listen, James, word of advice. Stop trying to prove yourself. Just do the job.
Dad, I took a necessary risk.
Necessary means you have no other option. That wasn't necessary, and you know it.
What was that about? What do you think? Same thing it's always about.
The story picks up around a year or so after Gears of War 4, and it follows Kate, Del, and JD from the previous game as well. Kate is experiencing these nightmares and these visions of sorts, and she basically tries to figure out throughout the entirety of the game what her connection is to the monsters that they've been fighting, known as the Swarm, and how they're connected to the Locust, who were the original enemies from the original 3 games. So most of the game you're going to previous locations from the Gears games, mostly from Gears 2, to try and uncover secrets and the connection that Kate has to them. This story was amazing. Like, hands down amazing. The setup that they have in the beginning it's really, really good. It's really strong. The characters... Now, I don't know what happened between 4 and 5 in terms of the Coalition or whatever, but the writing in this game is infinitely better than 4's. The character development is great. I mean, it's character development that I wanted in 4, so that way I could relate to the characters a little bit more and, you know, see if I like them more or the same as the original Delta Squad from the original 3 Gears games. But this game, it made you really, really like the characters. There was a lot of really, really good moments, like touching moments between characters where, you know, they're reminiscing on something or they're joking around and they're socializing. They just seemed really human, and that helped me continue with the story tenfold. Because if they failed Kate's character arc, if they made her super, you know, boring and whatever, you wouldn't care about the story at all, and the whole story would fall flat on its face. Luckily, that isn't the case, and I was interested in this story from beginning to end. That being said, there is one act, unfortunately the 3rd act out of the 4-act campaign, where the 3rd act was a lot of fetch quests. It was really kind of just boring to me, and the desert wasn't really that interesting. It was pretty, but it wasn't really anything appealing at all. But right after that, the final act picks up just immediately. Like, all the stops are, they pull out all the stops. It's incredible. The action pieces that they have it's just like watching a giant action movie, and I loved every moment of it. There was not a dull moment in the final act. The rest of the game actually goes for a more horror-esque route than most of the Gears games, because most of them are usually action-oriented, and this, of course, this one is. But there were a lot of moments in the second act, especially, where you had to try and sneak through sections, or else you were going to get swarmed, like, immediately. And it made for some really, really intense moments, and moments where I was overwhelmed, and I had to fall back and try to figure out what to do next. This campaign is different than any other Gears campaign. It introduces open world, the aspect of open world. It's not Witcher level or Skyrim level of open world, but there are two massive areas that you get to explore. You have a vehicle called the Skiff, and you can explore this vast area of icy landscapes or red sand deserts, and it's just super cool. You can find different locations. You can find old locations that reminisce on the previous Gears games, and like I said, a lot had to do with the second Gears of War game, and it was really, really cool to explore. It threw me off. I had no idea that they were going to do an open world, and I hope they continue it in the next Gears game, whenever that comes out. The robot from the original 3 games, Jack, has returned, but this time they decided to make him an actual character. He has these sets of abilities that you can upgrade as you go through the game that can benefit you in different ways. He has a cloaking mechanic, he has an overshield, he has shock traps, he has a lot of gadgets at your disposal, and it was really nice to have those because there were a couple sequences that I was starting to get a little overwhelmed. I was running low on ammo, and using those gadgets helped me out a lot. Using the stealth to get out of a sticky situation, using a shock trap to try and immobilize the enemy as they were coming towards me. It was a lot of fun to mess around with them and upgrade them to see which ones I liked, to see which ones I could do without, because it doesn't match my play style. But it was a really, really, once again, welcome addition to the Gears series. The campaign had a lot of innovative things, and also got really gut-wrenching towards the end of the story, and I found myself screaming at the TV at certain things that happened. But overall, the story is easily one of the best in the series, and I can't wait to see where the story continues. The multiplayer in this game is so much fun. Everything we had from the previous games, and then some. You have new things you can unlock, weapon skins and stuff like that, similar to Gears of War 4, and it's just crazy. I myself, in previous Gears games, wasn't too big on the versus, only because I just wasn't good at it. So I found myself not really playing it as much compared to the likes of Story Mode or Horde. There were times that I would straight up stop the campaign because I wanted to keep playing versus. It was a lot of fun. I loved it. And me and my friend, we were playing and having a lot of fun. We were strategizing. There were a couple really intense moments we had. For example, him and I and another guy were the only ones left on our team. We had to strategize, had a lot of intense moments in the versus matches, and it was overall a lot of fun, and I'm still playing it now. It was an absolute blast. The graphics in this game are incredible. They are so beautiful. Between the sweeping icy landscapes to the lush jungles to the desolate deserts are just completely beautiful. I was in awe at sometimes because of how awesome, truly beautiful these graphics are, seriously. And there were a lot of times during cutscenes and stuff where I almost sat here and was like, honestly, this feels like I'm watching a movie. They were beautifully done and beautifully, directed, and honestly, it just fantastic. The graphics are super smooth. The versus and Horde run at around 60 frames per second. Super, super smooth, not a single lag spike at all. The campaign is a little bit dumbed down. It almost feels like a 30 FPS. I could be wrong. For me, it doesn't affect anything at all. It doesn't detract from the experience of the game at all, both in versus or in campaign, and I have a lot of fun with them either way. But the graphics, just top tier with this game. Easily the best looking Gears of War game ever. It definitely tops all of them.
Flash grenade out!
Where are you going? Don't miss out on my surprise!
Not so fast.
Good assist. Thanks.
Oh man, I'm hurt!
Horde mode is better than ever. It's the same old survive 50 waves of nothing but monsters throwing things at you until you die. It is so much fun. My friend and me have been working over and over again to try and get to wave 50, just increasing the difficulty a little bit more as we keep winning. And it's a really, really intense game. A lot of team-based stuff. The slightly altered system from Gears of War 4, where this time around, each character has specific abilities and power-ups that they use to benefit the team. For example, Marcus is kind of like Soldier 76 in Overwatch, and when you activate his ability, he hits only critical shots with his Lancer, or any weapon for that matter. His son, JD, has an ability that launches an airstrike on enemies and does insane amounts of damage, so on and so forth. Certain characters will have repair tools to try and help you with the defenses. It's a lot of fun, and it can get really, really, really intense during boss waves, and it's an absolute blast to play. So with this new Gears game, they added a new mode called Escape, where basically the story of it is your characters launch this toxin in this giant nest, and you have to get out as fast as possible. The way the trailers show it, it looks like it's a race against the clock, where you're trying to get to the end of the nest and make it out in time before you're overwhelmed or the toxin creeps up on you. Actually not the case. Instead, it's how long does it take you. It's a timer to see how long it took you to make it, as opposed to a timer that counts down to when you're all, dead. It's honestly kind of boring. There are a lot of moments in it I just kind of didn't really care for. I definitely think it should be expanded on, and eventually, with a couple of quality of life improvements for the game mode, it could actually be a pretty fun mode. Not as fun as Horde or Versus, but it could be its own, fun standalone mode that you can kind of go and, hang out with your friends or whatever, and just kind of have a fun time. But right now, it's in its infancy. It's kind of boring. And there are just many other modes that you can play that are a lot more enjoyable, like Horde, Versus, and Story. Out of the existing modes in this game, Escape is definitely the weakest, but by no means is it an absolutely terrible mode. Overall, this game delivered in everything I wanted it to. Its campaign was awesome, easily one of the best in the Gears series. Its gameplay was super smooth and 60 frames for both multiplayer modes, and story was just a little bit more dumbed down just for bigger action set pieces. Horde mode is just as fun as it's been, and they added a little bit more to it to try and mix and match and try and cater to different play styles. And Versus is just as good as it always has, with a little bit more in the customization department and what you can mess around with, which is also always welcome. And Escape is just a tiny bit weak, but overall could easily be improved in a future update, which I'm sure this game is going to have. And overall, it's just an incredibly fun game. I'm going to give this game an 8.5 out of 10. It is great. If you're a fan of the Gears series, you will not be disappointed. And if you're a newcomer, they do have a What's Happened in Gears and previously on Gears to discuss the events of the entire series so you can easily catch up and understand what's going on. But I do highly suggest playing the other Gears games. They are on Game Pass if you have that, and they're really, really fun as well, and I highly suggest you do that. So yeah, it is an 8.5 and easily lived up to the hype that I had for it, at least. Thank you guys so much for taking some time out of your day to watch this video. If you guys liked what you saw here, you can like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you thought of the game, what things you wish were improved. If you guys want to see other videos we have, I do have a few other reviews out. I recently, the past couple weeks, reviewed Dora, and that was a super fun time to film and to honestly watch and make fun of, because it's something. It's just as bad as you expected. But thank you guys so much, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace out, guys.